Welcome, everyone. I'm sorry I haven't been able to attend a session so far this morning. My name's Nils Andreassen. I'm the Executive Director of the Alaska Municipal League. I've spent 3 years trying to divorce myself from Arctic issues. My previous position was at the Institute of the North, where it was all Arctic all the time. But I am happy to be back in this space and really looking forward to any kind of conversation that involves municipal government, northern local governments in a conversation about the Arctic. And that's really what we're hoping to achieve today. We've invited a number of local government officials to join us to talk through what current cooperation looks like when it comes to northern or Alaska defense communities, what that cooperation looks like, where there are gaps, and how local governments can contribute to the United States thinking about its strategy in the Arctic. So really looking forward to, again, the discussion this morning. It does sound like we're in between you and lunch, so we probably just go late and they'll be fine. Figure it out. All right, we'll get started. See if we'll do like a mic test by asking you to each introduce yourselves. Just a short who you are, where you're from. But Bryce, do you want to start out?
Bryce Ward, Fairbanks North Star Borough Mayor.
Great.
Dennis Robinson, Vice Mayor, City of Unalaska.
Mayor Lucy Nelson, Northwest Arctic Borough.
Nathan Hadley Jr., Northwest Arctic Borough Assembly President.
Thank you. And I know there are a number of other Arctic local elected officials in the room. I wanted to recognize Doreen Lampy with the North Slope Borough. Thanks, Doreen. And I think John Handeland was planning on being here, but I haven't seen him. He was working through some medical issues. So looking forward again to the discussion. So this is going to be just a series of questions, and I'll encourage panelists to get to the point in your remarks. And I think the first question is really setting the stage. I know when I think about Alaska defense communities, this whole idea of community is important. The relationships that are in place between local governments and our national assets, our defense infrastructure. And I'm hoping you'll kind of talk about what that looks like right now. What is the degree of cooperation between your city or borough and the defense community? And Mayor Ward, if you can kick things off.
Yeah, thanks, Nils. So I think one of the things that I've experienced in my time in elected office is there seems to be at least some of a perspective of what happens on the installation is the installation and what happens in the community is separate. And what we've definitely learned here in the interior is that the two communities, if you will, are really one. And so what happens on the installation and off the installation are very much connected. From a quality of life perspective for soldiers and airmen and their families, but then from an economic perspective on the community side. Those soldiers bring paychecks, they bring enjoyment, recreational opportunities that they would like to engage in. And so it's really an opportunity for partnership and really for more integration between the installation and the community. And so we've done a couple things here locally to help bridge that gap, but I think the bottom line is we certainly can do better in pretty much every area. And so I'm looking forward to more what we can do as a community to support that.
Great, thank you. Dennis, Vice Mayor Robinson, please, what's that look like for Unalaska?
Well, for Unalaska, we're already the #1 fishing port. It's the largest fishing port in the United States, and we run about 120,000 plus containers of fish out of there annually. We have all the shipping infrastructure in place, both foreign and domestic, and we are working closely with an IRT program, which is a really underutilized program, and many villages in the community are in the state of Alaska could benefit from that. from that program that the military has. And we've asked them this year to look at the feasibility of what it would be to put a base or be able to have a military presence on Unalaska Island, and being strategically located, and we're ice-free and we're all-weather port, and so we're working closely with the IRT team, and for anybody that has any questions about that, please call me, and because it's a great program, and we can work closely with the Department of Defense on things that they need to have happen. So I think that's about all I have.
Then it's IRT for anybody who's...
Innovative Readiness Training.
Great. Thank you. Do we include Coast Guard too, and like Alaska Defense Communities? You have a Coast Guard presence, right?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
We do have a Coast Guard presence. They do all the crew changes on their vessels there, but they only have an MSO office there. But like I said, they do all the crew changes there for patrolling the Bering Sea.
Great.
And it's important.
Yeah. And I mean, for those of you, familiar with the Arctic map, it's great to see that Alaska's Arctic technically extends from the Aleutians up. It's a huge swath of the state, and it's great to see the connections that can develop between the lower part and the upper part and into the middle, and having to think through what are those connections, that interdependence between communities and across the state, across America's Arctic is critical. Mayor Nelson, what's that look like for the Northwest Arctic Borough?
For the Northwest Arctic Borough, we serve about 7,800 residents and 36,000 square miles. And currently, we do have military presence. We have veterans. We have active military. Just a few folks that are locally there. We have a facility. We have a Coast Guard hangar. They're there for about 3 months out of the year. When you look at the topic today on Department of Defense and strategy, the borough has been a really good partner on infrastructure projects like the Cape Blossom that's coming down the pipe, the Kivalina School, which is a new school that's being built, the road, all of these different infrastructure projects that are coming this construction season. And we'd really like to be a partner with DoD because we need a port. We have high cost of living. Again, I said Coast Guard is there for 3 months out of the year. They're 707 miles away from Kotzebue through the annual year. So when we have an emergency, they have to fly 707 miles to assist the Northwest Arctic Borough. We have 11 communities. And, we'd really like to have a military presence, and the Coast Guard, we'd like to have the infrastructure that's needed so that we can have a lower cost of living. And so I appreciate being invited here today. I have a lot to say. I know we're only allotted 1 minute. Right, Nils?
Yeah, yes.
We'll talk some more.
Great. Lucy, one of the things that struck me is, we need a port, and I wonder, that's true, or we benefit from a port, but really the reality is you need a port, right? America needs Arctic ports. And I think one of the pieces that we can do is kind of, yes, Alaska communities benefit from and contribute to and have a role in developing and shaping port development, but America needs Arctic ports, full stop. And from that kind of baseline, is that right, Lucy?
When I think about all the questions you're presenting us today, urban Alaska, like Anchorage and Fairbanks, were once rural Alaska and needed infrastructure in the very before my baby boom days. They needed that critical infrastructure so that they can have a lower cost of living. That's what we need, and we want to be a strategic partner. So come to Northwest Alaska, North Slope, and help us. We should have fair equity in infrastructure and programs and services.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Nathan, what would you add to where the Northwest Arctic's thinking about these issues?
Yes, before I go on, I want to recognize an assembly member who's an elder who's been on our Northwest Arctic Borough Assembly for many years. The reason why I want to recognize him, it's an honor to sit with him on the assembly. This elder also is a Vietnam War combat veteran, and I'd like to recognize Walter Sampson. Can you please stand? And with the, like Nils said, we want to help have the infrastructure of Department of Defense in our area. It's really important that, with the changing climate and the shipping that's happening every year and gaining more, attraction to the world. We need the military presence. We need the defense. I believe in that. I have a big family that are veterans also. My dad, he's 81. He went to Korea, so, and a brother that went to Iraq. So, we need that. We need a strong infrastructure and keep building. Yep.
Right. But it's the human infrastructure too, right? We're part of, it's our Alaskans who are actually part of that defense infrastructure. Some of you have touched already on gaps, but talk more about, there's the opportunity, there's currently some collaboration. What's next? Where do we go from here? Bryce, is there infrastructure or other needs that you see to be able to support and really strengthen Alaska communities to become defense communities?
Yeah, thanks, Nils. I think it was mentioned that a lot of our urban areas in Alaska developed out of this partnership with the military to fulfill a national need. And I think, there's great examples of this. The Alaska Highway is probably a prime example that here in the interior, with the Lend-Lease program, we served as one of the final stops, if you will, before those aircraft were handed off to our partners over in Russia at that time. And so there's definitely a need from an infrastructure perspective. But I think one of the other things that we really are seeing as more of a prevalence here in the interior is this issue of quality of life. And so many of the issues that the military has addressed or is addressing through quality of life initiatives, looking at education, looking at spousal employment, looking at recreational opportunities, are critical not just for military personnel, but for our families here in our communities as well. And so I see a direct parallel between some of these initiatives that DoD is looking at for quality of life and what we should be doing as mayors, as leaders in our community, to meet the needs of our community members as well. So I think there's a great partnership there on how we can continue to look at, if you will, metrics for measuring these standards, and then making sure we're being thoughtful in the resources that we do have on how we can improve those metrics and improve our overall quality of life in our communities.
So, Bryce, there's a feedback loop then, right, between the DoD assets, the infrastructure, the defense assets and infrastructure, the benefits to the community, but then the role of the community in having the things that infrastructure depends on, right? All the base supports, and that kind of mutually reinforcing cycle, I guess.
Yeah, if there was one thing I could say that makes that possible, it's the relationship that you have with your installation commanders, with your leadership throughout the state. And General Sachs, I very much appreciate your comments that you had on reaching out to communities across the state of Alaska to build those relationships. You certainly don't want to be establishing them in the event of a disaster. And if there's a takeaway I had from this last year with COVID is those partnerships are critically important regardless of the situation on the ground. So if there was a takeaway from that, first, I think it's that you have to have those strong relationships, which means they have to be established and maintained. And that allows you to have that feedback loop on what you're doing well and what you're doing that's not well that you need to be improving on.
Yeah, great. Dennis, kind of what would you add, I guess, to where are there gaps? I know, as the nation's largest fishing port, you've got kind of these additional responsibilities, especially relative to the marine environment. And we're not just projecting sovereignty, but we're ensuring the safety of mariners and access to those resources. What's needed in that region to be able to sustain those things?
Well, with the military presence in Unalaska, last year the IRT team happened to be in Unalaska when we had a number of Russian military vessels start doing exercises right in the middle of our fishing fleet. And the fishing, basically, were told to get out of there. And this was within our 200-mile limit, our EEZ. So it's important. I mean, that stresses the importance of having a military readiness on the surface, and for our country. One of the other things that we are working on, and we should be going live with a geothermal power production plant that is set to go live 2025. So we will have 100% renewable power available to any base or any presence that's there. But like I said, the importance of having that port developed and a military presence there is a national security issue, with food security also. And I envision that there will be multiple, not just one Arctic port, there will be multiple Arctic ports, because we are at a disadvantage of being farther from the Arctic, but yet when the ice is there, nobody moves on the surface. So that's one of the advantages we have. We are ice-free, all-weather, year-round port. So, and it's deep water. When I'm saying deep, our current port has 40 feet at dock face. We're limited on the entrance of our harbor to right now to 43 feet, but we are working with our Corps of Engineers, and we will be dredging that entrance to 58 feet to allow for some of the larger military vessels in there, to be able to do crew changes and whatever else they need to do. We had an incident, our incidents with a submarine that needed to have a heavy lift part that required a crane, and they wanted to come in our port and asked the Pilots Association if they could pilot a submarine in there, and the pilots said, "Of course we can." And the next words out of the Navy's mouth was, "Well, you're going to have to shut the port down just for security reasons." Well, we happen to be, like I said, the largest fishing port in the United States, and we happen to be in the busiest season, busiest part of the season. So, I mean, we basically couldn't do that. They had to take and put that part on a barge with a crane and move over to the next bay, which is ideal for the military in that case.
Dennis, I think your
it provides
minute's
us
almost
security. So thanks.
Yeah. So listen, you tell us how many feet you need. Dennis will build it. But I like this system of port infrastructure, right? It's not one port that we're talking about. It's a dual line of ports, or I don't know what the right analogy is. And it starts, I mean, I've got the municipality of Anchorage right here, so I will say it starts with the Port of Alaska. It extends out the Aleutian Chain and up across western, northwest, and Arctic North Slope, Alaska. It's a comprehensive approach to maritime security that's going to be essential. And not all ports need to look the same, but that coastal infrastructure is critical. Lucy, what's the gap for you? And I know it's port, but talk more about what that looks like, or what are the concerns out that you might see? Well,
back in the early 60s and 70s, we had a military base, but it was demolished and thereafter, so we don't have a form of military presence per se. However, we have other critical infrastructure gaps, critical gaps. Our hospital is not a critical care. We have to be medevaced out of Kotzebue, which is the hub to Anchorage or the nearest hospital. The port is really important because it brings social and economic benefits to our region. It can bring the Coast Guard here and have an annual presence every year. We can have the lower cost of transportation, should we have a barge landing rather than having to set our barges out 12 miles away and lighter them in. We can have the Coast Guard military, tourism. I mean, there's so many economic benefits that our region can have, and also partner with the North Slope Borough, wherever a port is going to be designated. But we've advocated for many years to get the infrastructure that we need, that we feel that would be equitable to rural Alaska. And it took just about 37 years just to get the Cape Blossom infrastructure going. And so, you know, we can talk and talk, but we need action.
Yeah. Nathan, anything you would add?
Yeah, recently the Northwest Arctic Borough put in money to get the road going to Cape Blossom from Kotzebue. And the borough started out with $5 million to put in to have, you know, the gravel mobilized, and that we want this infrastructure. So we're working to get that started or going to get the interest of the government to, you know, be an area to be selected for military presence, a port, the Coast Guard. We recognize what our needs are and how it would benefit our area, but also all the villages in our area also. So, you know, we are working forward to get the attention. So hopefully it's working. Thank you.
Is it strong defense equals stronger communities equal stronger defense? I mean, that's the feedback loop. It seems like. Bryce, you wanted to add something to the conversation?
Yeah, you know, I think there's been a lot of discussion on ports, and I'm the inland guy, so
We can get you a port. I'm sure it's a feet thing, is my understanding. You just
we
need
could put one on the. There you go, right? But I think what's important is to understand, and I'm a contractor for those that don't know my background history, but it's kind of the analogy: if you build it, they will come. So for me, it's roads and houses. If you build a road, people will use it. And I think we see that with the ocean, is as the ocean becomes more traversable, people will come. And we see that definitely throughout Alaska, and especially up in the Northwest Passage, where as those seas become more navigable, more and more people are coming, not just Americans, but people from around the world. And I think Dr. Sfrega did a great job of explaining the significance to this. Is there's the United States, our side of the ocean, if you will, and then there's the Russian side. And so you can pick your path, and there's one that has a different perspective on the navigability of that passage versus, I think, the American view, which is that should be protected and used. And really, in order to have that perspective, you have to have the security there, and you have to have that ability for resources to be serviced. And so ports are needed for that. And there's definitely a partnership with Alaskans to be able to meet the needs of rural Alaska and all Alaskans through that type of partnership. So I think as the world changes, we can say it's not changing, or we can accept. And I thought it was a really interesting perspective that was shared earlier, that the Russian perspective on this is that the world is changing and they're going to take advantage of this. And so, I think it really gives Alaska and the United States an interesting perspective on how are we going to take advantage of this for Americans, for Alaskans, but really for the peace of the world when it comes to the Arctic and its traversability.
Yeah. I'm going to come back around one more time, but I did want to note, I know John can't be here from Nome, but I do want to recognize the resources and assets that we do have in the city of Nome and on the Seward Peninsula. And Doreen, I don't know if it's still true that the North Slope Borough has more assets in America's Arctic than the United States and the state combined, but it was always a good way to frame it. And the infrastructure that the North Slope Borough brings to search and rescue, emergency response, and supporting the the nation's largest oil field, something like that, is just incredible. And all of that rests on strong local governments. As we're getting ready for lunch, as we're preparing for the evolution of and next steps within America's Arctic strategy, how should you be involved? How should Alaskans, how should America's Arctic be involved? And what would you say to what that looks like?
If I could, before we get into that subject, in 2016, a cruise ship went aground outside of Kotzebue, and nowhere was the Northwest Arctic Borough prepared for that cruise ship going aground. So they had to transport all those folks into Kotzebue, and we weren't prepared for that. We don't have the adequate fire safety, the search and rescue. We have 147 volunteers region-wide. We don't have the adequate facilities and the support. Again, Coast Guard is 707 miles away, and they're not there year-round. And North Slope has been a great partner when it came to the search for the young girl several years ago. They have the helicopters and the planes, and they were able to come and assist us because we have an agreement. So they've been a great partner, and it really depends on the roads to resources, again, the infrastructure. If we had the infrastructure, I think we'd have a quicker response and be better prepared for some of those kinds of emergency situations.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Dennis, what should we say about the Arctic strategy? What would you say if you were drafting it, or to the drafters, what should be a priority to reflect Alaska's communities?
Bryce summed that up pretty good as far as, we build it, they will come. And, excuse me, that's the attitude that we've taken in Unalaska. And by looking at what the needs are going to be and starting to address them now, and like building a secure power source that is renewable energy. We are readying our port as well as the other areas in and around our island. So basically opening, making it easier for them to come is our goal, and that's what our goal is. So, and good point. We need search and rescue closer to the Arctic, and it has to happen. When those waters open, it needs to be there, because it would be a shame to have a large spill out there and not be able to respond to it, or have a cruise ship ground like that, but in a more serious situation where people go into the water. It has the potential to create a lot of death. So those are all important things.
Thanks. Nathan, how will America's Arctic strategy reflect America's Arctic?
For one, we know that the Northwest Passages open up more every year, and we know that there are many oil tankers that pass through there now. And, having a response team for in case oil spill happen out there in the ocean, before it really gets into our area, which it would, we would have the response team to start working at that because of the currents that comes towards Alaska from the other side. And like Mayor Lucy said, with the cruise ship, even our hospital isn't large enough to service the people that need service, whether they're, injured or sick. So we need that, to help everyone, not only ourselves, but it would really work both ways. Thank you.
Yeah. Lucy, how does America's Arctic strategy, how should it reflect Alaska's communities?
As I said earlier, urban Alaska was once rural Alaska, and we should be treated the same. We want infrastructure. We've advocated it for many years. Leadership before my time have gone to Juneau, to Washington, D.C. If you have the power to develop a port in Northwest Alaska or North Slope, come to our table. We welcome you at the assembly in the Northwest Arctic Borough. We know it's COVID times and it's challenging. A lot of us have not been able to travel much, and to have people come up and meet with us. The Coast Guard comes to our meetings. Our door is open. We just need to connect and start taking action. Thank you.
Lucy, did you want to use this opportunity to announce next year's Alaska Defense Forum in Kotzebue? Did we talk about that?
Sure. If you've got the solution
Vincent,
to
I'm just kidding.
fixing
I
COVID,
don't know.
fix COVID for.
Fix COVID first. Perfect. Bryce, closing words. How does America's Arctic strategy reflect America's Arctic communities?
Yeah, so as I read through the different branches of the military and the Arctic strategies that each of one of them have developed, there's one word that stands out to me, and that's the word presence. And so it's been said, possession is 9/10 of the law. And so I think as we look to the future and we look at our position as a state, in our role to play in our nation's defense, it has to be viewed to that aspect of presence. And so in order to have presence, you have to have infrastructure. In order to have people, you have to have these amenities that support that. That's roads, that's ports, that's power infrastructure, and things like that. So I think there's definitely room for development in this area, especially if we want to have that presence in the Arctic, because if we don't, someone else will, and it probably won't be to our benefit. So I think it's in the best interest of Alaskans and Americans to have that presence and have that presence in the Arctic. Our Arctic is Alaska. Thanks, Nils.
I think with that, we will wrap up this session. So just in conclusion, lunch is right there. Thanks everybody for your attention this morning. I'm going to turn things over back to Brittany. She wants to make some remarks and announcements. Thanks again to all the Arctic mayors, local elected officials in the room and on the panel.